Leonarda Cianciulli, the Soap-Maker of Correggio. Leonarda Cianciulli, infamously known as the Soap-Maker of Correggio, was an Italian serial killer who murdered 3 women between 1939 and 1940. She gained notoriety not only for her gruesome killings but also for turning her victims into soap and tea cakes. Her bizarre crimes, motivated by superstition and her obsessive desire to protect her children, shocked Italy and have since become one of the country's most infamous true crime stories. Early life of Leonarda Cianciulli. Leonarda Cianciulli was born in 1894 in Montella, a small town in the southern Italian province of Avellino. From a young age, she believed she was cursed. Her mother, reportedly bitter about having been forced into an unwanted marriage, had cursed Leonarda before she was born. This curse weighed heavily on Cianciulli throughout her life, and she became deeply superstitious, believing that fate and dark forces controlled her destiny. Cianciulli's early life was marked by hardship. She attempted suicide twice as a young woman, and after marrying Raffaele Panzardi in 1917, her relationship with her family became even more strained. Her parents disapproved of the marriage, and Leonarda believed that their disapproval further added to her curse. Despite her struggles, she and Panzardi eventually settled in Correggio, a small town in northern Italy, where they started a family. The superstition, and the descent into murder. Cianciulli experienced significant tragedy throughout her life. She became pregnant 17 times, but only 4 of her children survived to adulthood. This fueled her belief in her curse and made her incredibly protective of her remaining children. In 1939, her eldest son, Giuseppe, was drafted into the Italian army as World War II loomed, and Cianciulli became terrified that she would lose him. Desperate to protect her son from harm, Cianciulli turned to dark superstition. She believed that the only way to lift the curse and ensure her son's safety was to offer human sacrifices. Convinced that this would spare Giuseppe's life, she devised a plan to kill women from her community, using them as sacrifices to break the curse. The murders. Cianciulli's victims were women who lived in her neighborhood and whom she lured into her home with promises of help. She posed as a fortune teller and offered the women advice or assistance, but her true intentions were far more sinister. Faustina Setti. Cianciulli's first victim was Faustina Setti, a lonely spinster in her 70s who visited Cianciulli for advice on finding a husband. Cianciulli told Setti that she had found a suitable man for her in Pola, but first, she advised Setti to write letters to her family and friends, explaining that she was leaving town to meet him. On December 17, 1939, Setti visited Cianciulli's home for the last time. Cianciulli gave her a glass of wine laced with drugs, and once Setti was unconscious, she killed her by striking her with an axe. She then dismembered Setti's body and used the remains to create soap and tea cakes. She later fed the tea cakes to her family and friends. Cianciulli would later confess that she had disposed of Setti's body in the following way. Francesca Soavi. Cianciulli's second victim was Francesca Soavi, a 55-year-old schoolteacher. Like Setti, Soavi had turned to Cianciulli for advice about her future. Cianciulli convinced her that she had secured a teaching job for her in Piacenza and, like her previous victim, urged Soavi to write letters to her family explaining her departure. On September 5, 1940, Soavi visited Cianciulli's home, where she was drugged, murdered with an axe, and dismembered. Cianciulli used Soavi's remains to make soap and tea cakes, which she again served to her family. Virginia Cacioppo. Cianciulli's final victim was Virginia Cacioppo, a well-known former opera singer who had fallen on hard times. Cianciulli promised to help her secure work as a secretary for a wealthy man in Florence. As she had done with her previous victims, Cianciulli urged Cacioppo to write letters explaining her sudden departure. On September 30, 1940, Cacioppo arrived at Cianciulli's home, where she was murdered in the same way as the others. Cianciulli later remarked that Cacioppo's flesh was particularly sweet and tender, stating, "Arrest and trial." Despite Cianciulli's meticulous planning, her crimes eventually caught up with her. Virginia Cacioppo's sister became suspicious of her sudden disappearance and reported her concerns to the police. Investigators quickly traced Cacioppo's last known whereabouts to Cianciulli's home, where they arrested her in 1940. During interrogation, Cianciulli confessed to the murders in chilling detail. She showed no remorse for her actions and even seemed proud of the soap and tea cakes she had made from her victims' bodies. She explained that she had done it to protect her son, believing that the human sacrifices were necessary to break the curse and keep him safe. In 1946, after World War II, Cianciulli's trial began. It was a media sensation in Italy, with the public horrified by the gruesome nature of her crimes. Cianciulli's courtroom demeanor was calm and detached, and she freely admitted to the murders, providing detailed accounts of how she had killed, dismembered, and used the bodies of her victims. She was convicted of murder and sentenced to 30 years in prison and 3 years in a criminal asylum. The judge cited her mental instability as part of the reason for her confinement in an asylum after her prison sentence. Death and legacy. Leonarda Cianciulli died of a cerebral apoplexy, stroke, on October 15, 1970, in the women's criminal asylum where she had been held. She was 76 years old at the time of her death. Cianciulli's case remains one of Italy's most infamous true crime stories, not only because of the gruesome nature of her murders but also because of the bizarre blend of superstition and cannibalism that motivated her crimes. Her story has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries and films. Some of the items from Cianciulli's home, including the pot she used to boil her victims, are on display at the Criminological Museum in Rome, where they serve as a grim reminder of her macabre crimes.